Kate Morrison had always been the kind of woman who handled everything herself. At 32, she managed a busy marketing firm downtown, raised her 8-year-old daughter Emma as a single mother, and somehow still found time to volunteer at the local animal shelter on weekends. Her friends often joked that she was superhuman, but Kate knew the truth. She was just terrified of letting anyone down. The trouble started on a rainy Tuesday morning in October. Kate woke up feeling dizzy, but she pushed through it like she always did. She made Emma breakfast, packed her lunch, and drove her to school before heading to her own demanding job. The dizziness came and went throughout the day, accompanied by a strange tightness in her chest that she convinced herself was just stress. Her company had been chosen to present a major campaign to the city council next week. It was the biggest opportunity they'd ever had, and Kate had been working 18-hour days to make sure everything was perfect. The presentation could secure their future for years to come, and as the lead account manager, all the pressure fell on her shoulders. William Chen had been watching Kate struggle from his desk across the office. As the company's financial advisor, he worked closely with Kate's team, and he'd noticed the subtle changes in her behavior over the past few weeks. She'd become more irritable, forgetting small details that she normally caught instantly. Dark circles had appeared under her eyes, and she'd started declining lunch invitations, claiming she was too busy to eat. William had known Kate for 3 years, ever since he'd joined the company after his divorce. He admired her dedication and strength, but he also recognized the signs of someone pushing themselves too hard. He'd been there himself after his marriage fell apart, working himself into exhaustion to avoid dealing with his emotions. On Wednesday, Kate collapsed during a team meeting. One moment she was explaining the timeline for the city council presentation, and the next she was on the floor, unconscious. William was the first to reach her, checking her pulse while someone else called for an ambulance. When Kate came to a few minutes later, she tried to brush it off as low blood sugar, but William insisted she go to the hospital. The emergency room doctor ran several tests and delivered news that shook Kate to her core. Her blood pressure was dangerously high. She was severely dehydrated, and blood tests showed signs of extreme stress on her body. The doctor explained that she was experiencing what could be considered a physical breakdown, her body's way of forcing her to stop before something more serious happened. "You need at least 2 weeks of complete rest," the doctor told her firmly. "No work, minimal stress, and you need to make some serious changes to your lifestyle." Kate's first thought wasn't about her health. It was about the presentation. "I can't take time off," she protested. "My team needs me. We have the biggest presentation of our lives next week." William, who had driven her to the hospital and waited through all the tests, finally spoke up. "Kate, the presentation won't matter if you're not alive to give it." That evening, after William had driven her home and helped explain the situation to Emma, Kate sat in her living room feeling more lost than she had since her divorce 5 years ago. Emma, wise beyond her 8 years, climbed onto the couch next to her mother. "Mommy, are you going to be okay?" Emma asked, her voice small and worried. Kate wanted to give her usual response, that everything was fine, that she could handle anything. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she found herself crying for the first time in months, all the stress and fear finally breaking through the wall she'd built around herself. The next morning, Kate tried to go to work, despite the doctor's orders. She made it exactly 30 minutes before the dizziness returned with a vengeance. William found her gripping her desk, trying not to fall, and immediately took charge of the situation. "That's it," he said firmly but gently. "You're going home, and you're not coming back until you're actually well." "But the presentation," Kate started. "I'll handle it," William interrupted. "I know the project almost as well as you do, and your team is more capable than you give them credit for. The company will survive without you for 2 weeks." Kate wanted to argue, but she felt too weak and dizzy to fight. As William helped her to his car, she realized this was the first time in years that someone else was taking care of her instead of the other way around. Over the next few days, William proved to be an unexpected source of support. He checked on Kate daily, bringing groceries and helping with Emma when needed. He coordinated with Kate's team to ensure the presentation stayed on track, providing updates that eased her anxiety about being away from work. What surprised Kate most was how naturally William stepped into a supportive role without trying to take over completely. He asked for her input on important decisions, but made it clear that her job was to rest and recover. He treated Emma with genuine kindness, helping with homework, and even teaching her some basic guitar chords during his visits. "Why are you doing this?" Kate asked him one afternoon as he prepared dinner in her kitchen while she rested on the couch. William paused in his chopping of vegetables, considering his answer carefully. "Because someone needs to, and because I know what it's like to hit rock bottom with no one there to catch you." He went on to explain how his divorce had left him isolated and overworked, leading to his own health scare 2 years ago. A colleague had stepped in to help him then, and he'd learned the importance of accepting support from others. "Besides," William added with a small smile, "you're not the only one who cares about this company succeeding. Your presentation is my financial projections, too." As the week progressed, Kate began to notice things she'd been too busy and stressed to see before. Emma was more relaxed when William was around, laughing more freely than she had in months. The house felt calmer somehow, despite Kate's initial anxiety about being away from work. Kate also started to see William differently. She'd always thought of him as the quiet, serious financial guy, but she was discovering his dry sense of humor and genuine compassion. He never made her feel guilty for needing help, never acted like her situation was an inconvenience. On Friday, exactly 1 week after her collapse, Kate received a call that made her stomach drop. The city council had moved up the presentation to the following Monday, 4 days earlier than planned. Her team was panicking, and the client was threatening to look elsewhere if they couldn't accommodate the change. Kate immediately started planning to return to work, despite still feeling weak and dizzy at times. This was exactly the kind of crisis she'd always handled before, the reason she couldn't afford to be away from the office. But William had other plans. When he arrived that evening and Kate explained the situation, his response surprised her. "No," he said simply. "What do you mean, no?" Kate asked, confused. "I mean, no, you're not going back to work early. No, you're not sacrificing your health for this presentation. And no, you're not the only person capable of handling a crisis." Kate felt a flash of her old anger and stubbornness. "You don't understand. This could make or break our company. I can't let everyone down." "You won't be," William replied calmly, "because I'm going to step in and make sure this presentation happens, with or without you there." The conversation that followed was the first real argument they'd had. Kate accused William of not understanding the stakes, while William accused Kate of being unable to trust anyone else with anything important. Emma watched from the stairs, having never seen her mother argue with anyone except on phone calls with work. Finally, William sat down across from Kate and spoke more seriously than she'd ever heard him. "Kate, I'm not trying to take over your life or your work. I'm trying to save your life. You collapsed a week ago because your body literally couldn't handle what you were putting it through. If you go back now, if you push through this crisis like you've pushed through every other one, what happens next time? What happens to Emma if you end up in the hospital for real?" The question hit Kate like a physical blow. She looked up at Emma, who was now sitting on the stairs openly crying, and realized her daughter had been more affected by recent events than Kate had acknowledged. That night, after Emma was asleep, Kate made one of the hardest decisions of her adult life. She agreed to let William handle the presentation in her place, with her providing input and support from home. It felt like giving up, like admitting failure, but she also recognized that William was right about the stakes being higher than just work. The weekend became a strange mix of work and rest, as Kate guided William and the team through final preparations, while trying to follow her doctor's orders to take it easy. She was amazed by how well William grasped the creative aspects of the campaign, bringing a financial perspective that actually strengthened their proposals. Sunday evening, as they finished the final review of the presentation materials, Kate found herself watching William with new eyes. He'd essentially put his own work aside for over a week to support her and ensure her project succeeded. He'd done it without expecting anything in return, without making her feel weak or incapable. "I don't know how to thank you," Kate said as William prepared to leave. "Don't thank me yet," he replied with a nervous smile. "Wait until after I don't completely mess up your presentation tomorrow." As Kate watched him drive away, she realized something had fundamentally shifted in her understanding of what it meant to accept help from someone else. For the first time in years, she felt like she wasn't carrying everything alone. Monday morning arrived with a mix of anticipation and terror for Kate. She woke up early, her mind immediately jumping to the presentation that would begin in just a few hours. William had insisted she stay home and rest, but every fiber of her being wanted to be in that conference room. At exactly 9 o'clock, William called her from the office. "The team is ready," he reported, his voice steady despite what Kate knew must be nerves. "Everyone knows their parts, the materials look great, and the city council members are all confirmed to attend." "Are you sure you don't want me to come in?" Kate asked for the 10th time that morning. "I could sit in the back, just in case." "Kate," William interrupted gently, "trust me. Trust your team. We've got this." As the hours passed, Kate found herself pacing her living room, checking her phone constantly for updates. Emma, who had stayed home from school to keep her mother company, watched her mother's anxiety with the wisdom of a child who'd learned to read adult emotions early. "Mom, you're making me nervous," Emma finally said from her spot on the couch where she was doing homework. "Why don't you call Uncle William and see how it's going?" Kate smiled despite her worry. Emma had started calling William Uncle sometime during the past week, and he seemed to genuinely enjoy the title. It was the first time since her divorce that Emma had formed a real attachment to any man in their lives. At noon, Kate's phone rang. The caller ID showed William's name, and she answered before the first ring finished. "How did it go?" she asked breathlessly. "Kate," William's voice came through the speaker, and she could hear the smile in his tone. "We got it." The words took a moment to register. "We got what?" "The contract, the full contract. Plus, they want to discuss expanding the scope for next year. Kate, it was incredible. Your campaign was exactly what they were looking for." Kate sank onto the couch next to Emma, feeling a rush of relief so strong it made her dizzy. "Tell me everything," she demanded. William's account of the presentation painted a picture that both thrilled and humbled Kate. Her team had performed flawlessly, each member stepping up in ways she hadn't expected. William himself had delivered the financial projections with a confidence and clarity that impressed even the most skeptical council members. "The best part," William continued, "was when Councilman Rodriguez asked about our company's stability and commitment to the community. Sarah spoke up about your volunteer work at the animal shelter and how that reflects the company's values. Then Mike mentioned your dedication to the team and how you've mentored each of them. Kate, they weren't just impressed with the campaign. They were impressed with you, even though you weren't there." After hanging up, Kate found herself crying again, but this time the tears were different. They weren't tears of stress or fear, but of gratitude and something that felt like hope. The celebration at the office that afternoon happened without her, but William made sure she felt included. He sent photos of the team cheering, videos of the impromptu champagne toast, and a picture of the signed contract with her name prominently listed as lead project manager. That evening, William arrived at Kate's house with takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant and a bottle of sparkling cider to celebrate with Emma. As they sat around Kate's kitchen table, sharing pad thai and spring rolls, Kate realized this felt more like a family dinner than any meal she'd had in years. "I have something to tell you both," William said as they finished eating. Emma looked up with curious eyes, while Kate felt her stomach tighten with unexpected anxiety. "The company wants to offer me a promotion," he continued. "They're expanding the financial department and they want me to head it up." "That's wonderful," Kate exclaimed, genuinely happy for him, despite a strange flutter of disappointment in her chest. "There's just one catch," William said, his eyes meeting Kate's. "The position would require me to relocate to our Seattle office." The silence that followed felt heavy with unspoken implications. Emma was the first to break it. "But Uncle William, you can't move away. Who's going to help Mom when she gets sick again?" Kate's cheeks flushed with embarrassment, but William responded to Emma with complete seriousness. "Well, that's something your mom and I need to talk about. But you're right that it's important for her to have people who care about her nearby." Later that evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Kate and William sat on her front porch, both nursing cups of tea and avoiding the conversation they both knew they needed to have. "When would you need to decide?" Kate finally asked. "They want an answer by Friday," William replied. "It's a good opportunity, Kate. More money, more responsibility, a chance to build something from the ground up." "You should take it," Kate said quickly, though the words felt like they were being pulled from her throat. "You've already done so much for us. You can't put your life on hold because I had a breakdown." William was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the soft light from the porch lamp. "Is that what you think this is? Me putting my life on hold?" "Isn't it?" Kate asked, confused by his tone. "Kate, these past 2 weeks haven't felt like a sacrifice to me. They felt like I've been part of something important, not just the work. But this." He gestured between them and toward the house where Emma slept. "I've felt more useful, more connected, more like myself than I have since my divorce." Kate stared at him, processing words she hadn't expected to hear. "William, I'm not saying this to pressure you," he continued quickly. "I'm just saying that helping you, being here with you and Emma, it doesn't feel like I'm putting my life on hold. It feels like I'm finally living it again." The confession hung in the air between them, shifting something fundamental in their relationship. Kate had been thinking of William's support as an act of charity or friendship, but his words suggested something deeper and more complicated. "I don't know what to say," Kate admitted honestly. "You don't have to say anything right now," William replied. "Just think about it. Think about what you want, not just what you think you should want or what's practical or safe." Over the next few days, Kate found herself thinking about little else. She returned to work gradually, starting with half days and building up to full time as her strength returned. The success of the city council presentation had opened new doors for the company, and Kate found herself busier than ever with potential new clients. But something had changed in how she approached her work. Instead of trying to handle everything herself, she began delegating more responsibility to her team members. She discovered that not only were they capable of handling more complex tasks, but they seemed to thrive when given the opportunity to contribute more meaningfully. William had postponed giving his answer about the promotion, claiming he needed more time to consider all the factors. But Kate could see the uncertainty in his eyes, and she knew her response to his confession was weighing heavily on his decision. On Thursday evening, Kate was working late in her office when she overheard a conversation between two colleagues in the hallway. "I heard William might be leaving for Seattle," one said. "Really? That's too bad. He's been great to work with, especially during Kate's medical leave. Did you see how he stepped up for that presentation?" "Yeah, and have you noticed how different Kate seems since she came back? less stressed, more willing to let other people help. I think almost losing her made us all realize how much we rely on her. Maybe that's not entirely a bad thing, the first voice replied. Kate's brilliant, but she was burning herself out trying to do everything alone. Maybe having someone like William around would be good for her. After they moved on, Kate sat in her office thinking about their words. She realized that her colleagues had noticed the same changes in her that she was beginning to acknowledge herself. The question was whether those changes would last, or whether she'd slip back into her old patterns once the crisis had fully passed. Friday morning arrived with an unusual energy in the office. Everyone knew William needed to give his final answer about the promotion, and the tension was palpable. Kate found herself watching the clock, knowing that with each passing hour, William was getting closer to a decision that would affect all their lives. At lunchtime, William knocked on Kate's office door. He looked tired, like he'd been up all night thinking. "Can we talk?" he asked. Kate nodded, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. They walked to the small conference room where just 3 weeks ago, Kate had collapsed during a team meeting. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. "I've made my decision about Seattle," William said without preamble. Kate braced herself for what she was certain would be news of his departure. "I'm turning it down." The words hit Kate like a surprise splash of cold water. "What? Why? William? This could be huge for your career." "Maybe," he acknowledged. "But I've realized that career advancement doesn't matter much if you're not happy with your life. And I'm happier here, doing this work, being part of this team, being part of your life, than I've been in years." Kate felt a surge of emotions she wasn't sure how to process. Relief, gratitude, something that might have been joy, and underneath it all, a fear that she was somehow trapping him in a situation that wouldn't be good for either of them in the long run. "William, you can't make this decision based on me," she said carefully. "What if things don't work out the way you're hoping? What if I'm not ready for whatever this is between us?" "Then we'll figure it out as we go," he replied simply. "Kate, I'm not asking you to marry me or even date me. I'm just asking you to let me be part of your life, whatever that looks like. And I'm choosing to stay here because this feels like home in a way Seattle never could." That afternoon, William officially declined the promotion, citing personal reasons for wanting to remain in their current city. The news spread quickly through the office, and Kate found herself fielding questions and comments from colleagues who had their own theories about his decision. But the most important conversation came that evening, when Kate sat down with Emma to talk about William's choice to stay. "Are you happy that Uncle William isn't moving away?" Kate asked her daughter. Emma nodded enthusiastically. "I like him, Mom. He's nice to us, and he makes you smile more." "Would you be okay if Uncle William spent more time with us? Like if we had dinner together sometimes? Or if he helped out when I have to work late? Would he be like a dad?" Emma asked, her 8-year-old directness cutting straight to the heart of Kate's own questions. "I don't know," Kate answered honestly. "Maybe someday. Would that be okay with you?" Emma considered this seriously. "I think so. But only if he promises not to leave when things get hard." The wisdom of her daughter's words struck Kate deeply. Emma had learned early that adults sometimes left when situations became difficult, and she was protecting herself from that disappointment. "That's a very smart thing to think about," Kate told her. "Maybe we should ask him about that." That weekend, Kate invited William over for what she mentally called the conversation. They were going to talk openly about what his decision to stay meant, what they both wanted from their relationship, and how they could move forward in a way that protected everyone involved, especially Emma. Saturday afternoon found Kate, William, and Emma in an unexpected place for such an important conversation, the local animal shelter where Kate volunteered. Emma had asked if they could visit the dogs before their big talk, and somehow the neutral setting felt right to all of them. As they walked through the kennels, watching Emma's delighted interactions with the animals, Kate felt some of her nervous energy begin to settle. William seemed equally relaxed, stopping to read the information cards on each cage and asking thoughtful questions about the shelter's operations. "This one's been here the longest," Kate explained, stopping in front of a cage housing a gentle-looking golden retriever mix named Buddy. "He's 7 years old, which makes him harder to place. People usually want puppies." William knelt down to Buddy's level, extending his hand for the dog to sniff. "Sometimes the older ones make the best companions," he said quietly. "They've learned what's important." Emma, who had been playing with a rambunctious puppy in the next kennel, overheard the comment. "Is that why you like Mom?" she asked with the devastating honesty of childhood. "Because she's older and knows what's important?" Both adults laughed, and Kate felt some of the tension she'd been carrying begin to dissolve. Whatever happened in their conversation today, at least they could laugh together. After their shelter visit, they returned to Kate's house, where Emma disappeared upstairs to her room, giving the adults privacy with the understanding that they'd call her if they needed her input on anything that affected her. Kate and William settled in the living room with coffee, both seeming unsure how to begin such a significant conversation. "Emma asked me something yesterday," Kate finally said. "She wanted to know if you'd promise not to leave when things get hard." William's expression grew serious. "What did you tell her?" "That it was a good question, and that we should ask you directly." "And what do you want to know?" William asked, meeting her eyes. Kate took a deep breath. "I want to know if you understand what you're signing up for. I'm a single mother with a demanding career and apparently serious issues with accepting help from other people. I had what amounts to a nervous breakdown 3 weeks ago. I'm probably going to need ongoing support to maintain the changes I've made, and there's no guarantee I won't slip back into old patterns when things get stressful again." William listened to her litany of potential problems without interrupting, his expression thoughtful rather than concerned. "Are you trying to talk me out of this?" he asked when she finished. "Maybe," Kate admitted. "I don't want you to make a decision based on who you think I could become, or some idealized version of what our relationship might be. I want you to decide based on who I actually am, problems and all." William was quiet for a moment, considering his response. "Kate, 3 years ago, I was divorced, depressed, and working 80-hour weeks to avoid dealing with my life. I was the guy who ate dinner at his desk every night and hadn't taken a vacation in 2 years. Does that sound like someone who has his life figured out?" Kate shook her head. "The difference is that I had to hit rock bottom alone," William continued. "I had colleagues who were friendly, but nobody who really knew what I was going through. When I finally got help, it was because my doctor told me I was heading for a heart attack before my 40th birthday." He reached for Kate's hand, a gesture that felt natural despite the serious nature of their conversation. "What I'm saying is that everyone has times when they need support. Everyone has patterns they need to change. The question isn't whether you'll face challenges, it's whether you'll face them alone or with someone who cares about you." "And Emma?" Kate asked. "She's not just part of the package. She's the most important part. If we do this, if we try to build something together, you'd be taking on a parental role eventually. That's a huge responsibility." William smiled, the first genuinely relaxed expression she'd seen from him all day. "Kate, Emma is amazing. She's smart, funny, kind, and she's handled everything life has thrown at her with more grace than most adults I know. Being part of her life wouldn't be a responsibility I'm taking on. It would be a privilege I'm hoping to earn." They were interrupted by Emma herself, who appeared in the doorway looking slightly anxious. "Are you guys fighting about me?" she asked. "Not fighting," Kate assured her quickly. "Just talking about important stuff." Come here." Emma climbed onto the couch between them, looking from one adult to the other. "Uncle William," she said seriously, "Mom wants to know if you'll promise not to leave when things get hard." William turned to face Emma fully. "That's a very important question, and I want to give you a very honest answer." Emma nodded solemnly. "I promise that I will never leave just because things get difficult or complicated," William said carefully. "Families work through problems together. They don't run away from them. But I also can't promise that nothing will ever change, because sometimes people have to make hard choices for good reasons." Emma considered this. "Like if you got sick and had to move somewhere for doctors?" "Exactly like that," William agreed. "But I can promise that any big changes would be decisions we make together, as a family, and I can promise that loving you and your mom isn't something I'm going to change my mind about." Kate felt tears starting in her eyes as she watched her daughter process this answer. Emma was quiet for a long moment before speaking again. "Okay," she said finally. "But if we're going to be a family, I think you should know that Mom gets really grumpy when she's hungry, and she always forgets to buy milk until we're completely out." The tension in the room broke completely as all three of them laughed. Kate realized that somehow, without making any formal declarations or decisions, they had moved past the question of whether they would try to build a life together and into the practical realities of how they would make it work. Over the following weeks, Kate, William, and Emma began the delicate process of blending their lives. It started small, William joining them for dinner twice a week, helping Emma with math homework that challenged Kate's patience, being available when Kate had evening meetings or weekend work commitments. The changes were gradual enough that Emma adapted easily, but significant enough that Kate sometimes felt overwhelmed by how different her life was becoming. For 5 years, she had operated as a single unit, making all decisions independently and relying only on herself for emotional and practical support. Learning to consult with someone else, to share responsibilities and decision-making, required a level of vulnerability that Kate found both terrifying and liberating. The first real test came 6 weeks later when Kate caught the flu that was going around the office. In the past, she would have medicated herself heavily and powered through, probably making herself sicker in the process. This time, William insisted she stay home and rest while he handled Emma's school pickup and evening routine. Kate spent the day in bed, listening to the sounds of William and Emma in her kitchen, making dinner and discussing Emma's upcoming science project. The domesticity of it all was foreign but not unwelcome. "Mom," Emma said, appearing in the doorway with a bowl of soup, "Uncle William made this for you. He says it's his grandmother's recipe for sick people." As Kate sipped the soup and watched Emma chatter about her day, she realized that being cared for didn't make her weak or dependent. It made her part of something larger than herself. 3 months after William's decision to stay, Kate made a decision of her own. She applied for a promotion within her company that would give her more strategic responsibilities, but also better work-life balance. During the interview process, she was honest about her recent health scare and the changes she'd made to prevent a recurrence. To her surprise, her honesty was viewed as a strength rather than a liability. Her supervisor noted that Kate's improved delegation skills and collaborative approach had actually made her team more effective, not less. The promotion came through in early spring, along with news that made Kate's success even sweeter. Her team had won a regional award for their city council campaign. The ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday evening, with partners and families invited to attend. "I guess this means I need to buy a dress," Kate told William as they discussed the event. "And I need to learn how to tie a proper bow tie," he replied. "Emma's already picked out her outfit. Apparently she's been planning what to wear to your award ceremony since the day we won the contract." The night of the ceremony, Kate stood in front of her bedroom mirror. Adjusting the navy blue dress she'd finally chosen after 3 shopping trips, It had been years since she'd dressed up for anything other than client meetings. "You look beautiful," William said from the doorway, and Kate felt a flutter of nervousness that had nothing to do with public speaking. Emma appeared beside him, resplendent in a purple dress with sparkly shoes. "Mom, you look like a princess." At the ceremony, Kate watched from her seat at the head table as William and Emma found their places in the audience. When her name was called and she walked to the podium to accept the award, she could hear Emma's enthusiastic cheering over the polite applause of the other attendees. "This award belongs to an amazing team," Kate began her acceptance speech, "but I want to acknowledge that individual success is never really individual. We all need people who support us, challenge us, and believe in us, even when we don't believe in ourselves." Her eyes found William and Emma in the audience as she continued. "6 months ago, I learned what happens when you try to do everything alone. I also learned what happens when you let the right people help you become the person you're meant to be. This award represents not just professional achievement, but personal growth, and I couldn't have achieved either without my incredible team and my incredible family." After the ceremony, as they walked to the car, Emma slipped her hand into Kate's, while William carried the heavy glass award. "Mom," Emma said, "are you happy now?" The question was simple, but it made Kate stop walking and really consider her answer. 6 months ago, she would have defined happiness as professional success and the ability to handle everything independently. Now, happiness felt like this moment, walking through a parking lot with the two people who mattered most to her, celebrating an achievement that belonged to all of them. "Yes," Kate said, squeezing Emma's hand and smiling at William. "I'm very happy now." As they drove home, Kate reflected on how much had changed since that terrifying day when she'd collapsed in the conference room. She'd learned to accept help without feeling weak, to share responsibilities without losing control, and to build a life that was bigger and richer than anything she could have created alone. The woman who had once been terrified of letting anyone down had discovered that the people who truly mattered would never ask her to be perfect. They would only ask her to be honest, to be present, and to let them be part of her journey. William had kept his promise to Emma. He hadn't left when things got complicated. Instead, he'd helped them all navigate the complications together, creating something that felt like the family Emma had asked for and the partnership Kate had never known she needed. That night, as Kate tucked Emma into bed, her daughter asked one final question. "Mom, do you think Uncle William will always be our family?" Kate thought about all the promises and conversations and gradual changes that had brought them to this point. "I think," she said carefully, "that the best families are the ones you choose and keep choosing every day. And I think we're all going to keep choosing each other for a very long time." As she turned off Emma's light and headed to her own room, Kate felt a deep sense of gratitude for the collapse that had seemed like the end of everything, but had turned out to be the beginning of the life she was truly meant to live.